If you've just started a service business, or you're about to, this is the most expensive mistake you can make. And no, it's not pricing, marketing, or effort. It's treating branding like a checkbox. Because this mistake doesn't lose you clients loudly, it loses them quietly. Most people think branding is a logo and a website, so they knock it out as fast as possible, get something live, and move on. And I get it, it feels like, okay, now I'm a real business. But here's where things start to go wrong. Your potential client lands on your website, and instead of thinking, oh, this is for me, they think, ugh, I don't get it. They hesitate and then they move on because confused people don't buy. So, in this video, I'm going to show you what branding actually is, why it matters so much early on, and how to stop this mistake from quietly costing you opportunities. Let me give you a really common example of how this shows up. Imagine someone who just left a job to start a service business. They're smart, capable, they know their craft. They get a logo made, and they build a website. They write out their services. It looks fine. Nothing is obviously wrong, but then something weird starts happening. They send people to the site, referrals, LinkedIn connections, maybe a few cold leads, and the responses are always kind of the same. So what exactly do you do? Or is it more like this, or is it more like that? Sales calls take longer than they should. Emails go back and forth. A lot of explaining. And some people just disappear. Not with a no, just silence. So the business owner starts adjusting things. They tweak the copy. They add more services. They try to sound more professional, but nothing really changes. From their perspective, the brand is done. They checked that box. But what they don't realize is that the problem isn't their effort. It's that no one can tell quickly why this business is for them. And here's why this ends up costing them so much. When someone lands on your site, they're not trying to analyze your business. They're just trying to make a quick decision. Is this for me? Do I trust this? Does this feel safe to move forward with? And they're trying to answer all of that in seconds. When your branding is unclear, they can't answer those questions quickly. So instead of leaning in, they hesitate. And hesitation is the killer, because hesitation doesn't look like rejection. It looks like, well, nothing. No emails, no bookings, no replies. And that's why this mistake is so expensive. You're not losing clients that you know about, you're losing the ones who never raised their hand in the first place. And it's easy to miss, especially early on, because people who already know you, well, they give you the benefit of the doubt. They already trust you. They don't need clarity to say yes. So at first it feels like things are working, but cold audiences don't do that. All they have to go on is what they see and what they understand fast. And if that signal is fuzzy, they move on. So what's actually going on here? Well, this is where most people get tripped up with branding. They think it's the stuff you can see, the logo, the website, the colors. But that's only a small part of the picture. A brand is a collection of associations people have about your business. That's it. It's what comes to mind when they think of you. Okay, take a second and think about Coca-Cola. Done? You probably pictured a feeling, maybe nostalgia, maybe a simple pleasures moment. And yeah, probably the color red and that white script logo. Coca-Cola spends billions to make sure those associations show up in your head, because it works. So branding is being intentional with how you want people to perceive you. And the thing most people don't realize is you already have a brand, whether you try to or not. If you don't shape those associations, they still form. But then they're messy and not what you want people to think of when they think of you. I use this phrase with clients a lot. Projection leads to perception. What you put out is what people assume about you. And if you never decide what those assumptions to be, you shouldn't be surprised when people get it wrong. When you don't do the foundational brand work, no amount of polish fixes the problem. You can redesign your site or rewrite the copy, but you're still stuck on the surface. When branding is intentional, something different happens. People recognize themselves immediately. They feel oriented. They feel safe moving forward. Not because you convinced them, but because things finally make sense in their minds. So, how do you make your brand make sense? Here's the simplest way to think about it. Branding is kind of like an iceberg. The tip of the iceberg is the logo, the website, the colors, the stuff you can see. And that's the part everyone starts with, but that's not the full brand. That's just what's floating above the surface. The real branding work, Like 80% of it lives underneath. It's why your business exists beyond just making money, or it's the promise you're actually making to customers. It's the future you want to help create. It's understanding who you're for, not just their problems, but also what they want, what they're frustrated by, and what they're hoping for. It's knowing who you're competing with and where you fit in the market. And it's why someone should choose you instead of the other options. It's the personality of your brand. If your business were a person, who would it be? How would it talk? How would it show up? When all of that stuff is clear, then the logo, the website, the messaging, those things, they almost design themselves. So yeah, branding is deciding how you want to be perceived and then aligning everything to reinforce that. But when you skip that work, you end up with a brand that just floats around, pulled by trends, reacting to competitors, and at the mercy of whatever's happening in the market. And that's why so many service businesses feel unstable early on. They didn't build the full iceberg, they just decorated the tip. And the goal of branding isn't to just make something look good, it's to build something solid enough underneath that everything on top actually holds. So when I say this is the most expensive mistake new service businesses make, I don't mean you picked the wrong colors or the wrong font or even the wrong website. What I mean is that you skipped the work that everything else depends on. You focused on what people could see before deciding what you wanted them to understand. And the problem isn't that you did something wrong, it's just that that part is invisible and nobody really teaches it. And almost everyone rushes past it. The good news is this is fixable. You're not behind. You don't need to scrap everything. And you don't need to work harder. You just need to slow down long enough to get clear on what your business actually stands for. Because once that foundation is in place, branding stops feeling confusing and starts feeling obvious. If you want help with that first layer, especially understanding why your business exists beyond just revenue, I've got another video that walks you through that step by step. And that's the place most people should start. Because once you get that right, everything else finally has something solid to build on.